In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how I made $1,200 in just 10 hours building and selling a voice agent. I'll take you through the contract, the proposal, the onboarding process, the entire agent altogether, including the make.com scenarios and my retail setup. Hopefully this will give you a full understanding with no gatekeeping on how to build a voice agent like this that you can turn around and sell and make real money in the process. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I've been building and selling AI voice agents for over a year now to companies around the world. I also founded one of the fastest growing communities for voice AI entrepreneurs and enthusiasts. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's video. So what exactly was the agent that I sold for $1,200? Well, it was an outbound sales agent based in Australia. It was a first for me. I've never done an Aussie agent, and it was pretty cool because I think the results of the outbound campaign will interest you at the end of the video, and I'll get to that. But first, let me explain how the agent worked, what the client wanted out of this agent. When the client came to me, he strongly disliked cold calling. He was like, "Mark, I cannot do this. I have 391 leads. Is there any way you could get your AI agent to do this for me?" And I said, okay, well, it depends, because cold calling can be really tricky, especially when it comes to tiptoeing the line of compliance. You see, in the United States, TCPA is outlawed any sort of cold calling unless the caller has explicitly opted into receiving the call. And if I were to do this in Australia, turns out you'd have to have the same kind of permission. Australia actually goes further than this, and they have a sun up to sundown rule. So you can only place these cold calls, even if the people have opted in during daylight hours. And that's exactly what we had to operate within those constraints for this. So he wanted basically an agent that would call the funeral homes and ask for the funeral director. So he needed a way to swooze past the receptionist, the gatekeeper, and get to the director. And then we needed to pitch the software once we were on the phone with the funeral director, which is really hard to do for an AI in reality. So, and then the last thing would be to confirm the funeral director's email before scheduling. I'm going to call it in here, but normally it would be calling me. Here we go. This is what it sounds like.
Hey, is this the funeral director at John's Funeral Homes?
No, it's not.
Okay. By the way, this call is recorded for quality assurance. May I have your name, please?
My name is Mark.
It's nice to meet you, Mark. My name's Steve, calling from Willowworks. Could you help transfer me to Mark, the funeral director? I need to follow up.
Sure, I'll transfer you over to Mark right now.
G'day, Mark. Just giving you a quick buzz about a tool saving funeral home's heaps of admin time. Give me 30 seconds. If you don't like it, I'll hang up on myself. Sound fair?
Yeah.
Picture this, Mark. It's late. You're buried in paperwork, chasing forms, handling payments, all while supporting grieving families. But at this rate, you'll need a funeral for your free time. That's where Willowworks comes in. It automates admin, BDM submissions, and payments so you can focus on what truly matters, helping families, not drowning in tasks. Many directors tell us it saves them hours every week. Would you be against seeing how it works?
I'm really busy, I'm sorry.
Totally get it, Mark. Most directors felt the same before they saw it in action. But once they did, they realized that. So,
okay, it's trying to sell me there. It was funny because the majority of the calls we made using this assistant, people thought it was a real person. I had a few, maybe 2 or 3 people ask, "Hey, hang on, is this a computer?" Like whispering, and they put the phone onto their friend in the office. But most of the people didn't even doubt, and there's a few reasons for that. One of the main reasons this agent did so well is because it also knew the funeral director's name, which I found to be a huge, just in general when it comes to cold calling, a huge benefit. What I did, as soon as I got the client requirements documentation and their website, I took it and I put it into what I like to use, Google AI Studio. And so I have this really nice prompt I've built. I use it for all my agents. What it does is it's a voice agent prompt builder. So I pasted it into Google. It has instructions here because this is for my community users to use. If you join, you get access to it. But basically what you do is you copy and paste the whole thing, and then you'd put it in here. And this is what I did. And then I pasted in also the client's information, so their whole website. And I said, generate for me, just straight like this. I'm not kidding. Make me an outbound calling agent, highly persuasive, great icebreakers that convince the person to book a call, and then I explain how it should first swooze up the receptionist to get me on the phone with the director, and that's exactly the process. And so I iterated this about probably 15 or 16 times, going through it back and forth. No, fix that, tweak this, having the AI just do the heavy lifting for me. And once I had something that I really liked, that's when I began to manually edit it. So I copy and pasted it, the whole thing, and I brought it over to Retell. And now this is the finished product, but what I want to do is take you through it line by line and how I edit it for myself. So, and I'll take you through the settings as well. This is the voice agent. It represents WillowWorks. Obviously, I've replaced the company name for privacy, but an all-in-one software solution designed for independent funeral homes in Australia. And then it gives it some information. One of my things for if you're new to prompting in general is I always go a 4-step prompting sequence for voice AI, and that's roles, rules, steps, and skills. So I always give the agent a role, then I give it some steps, some skills, and the rules that it must never break under any condition, which specifically delineates how the agent can operate. That's something I do a lot. I also, if you're new to voice AI in general, this is Retell AI. It's a software. I should have said this earlier. Retell AI is probably one of the most impressive softwares for building voice AI agents that I've seen. I've compared it to Vappy and others, but nothing takes the cake like Retell. And I've built all of my client agents using them, so I clearly believe that. This is the first part of the prompt. So I put in the objective, right? Book a short 15-minute demo. Never push the call if they're uninterested. Exit gracefully. Prompts like this are very important. Always book the demo only with the funeral director, never the receptionist. We had a problem where it was trying to book with the receptionist, and that wasn't okay. And then this is where we insert the dynamic variables. Always refer to the funeral director by name unless they say it is a different name or you don't have the name, okay? So some of the names in the database weren't included. I think the hardest part of this agent was actually just building the cold call sales script. Now, if you've done outbound sales at all, you'd find that this is probably pretty easy for you. For me, it wasn't. And so what I had to do was go back and forth a lot with the AI, and eventually the client and I agreed on that this was probably the best icebreaker for what we were doing. So we'd say, okay, by the way, this call's recorded. You have to say that. It's nice to meet you. My name's Steve, calling from WillowWorks. Could you help me transfer to name? That's the dynamic variable. Funeral director, I need to follow up. Okay, now you're on a first name basis, which establishes credibility from the get-go. And then I said only use this once you reach the funeral director, which is after the receptionist transfers you. And then it will say this line: "Good day, John. Just giving you a buzz about a tool saving funerals, buddies, funeral homes, heaps of admin time. Give me 30 seconds, and if you don't like it, I'll hang up on myself. Sound fair?" And most people actually laughed at that. They're like, "Oh, okay, whatever," and they let him keep talking. Now, if they say okay, continue, and then it gives the pitch right here, and that's the exact pitch the client wanted. Now, if they like it, it'll lock in a 15-minute demo. What day and time works best? And then we'd use the function use check calendar availability, which is the function on cal.com, and then also for booking appointments. I have an entire separate video you can check out if you want to learn about how to actually book appointments, build an appointment setting agent, which would save a lot of time. So go ahead and watch that video, and then you'd understand exactly the back logic that we're doing here. So once I make sure they're available, then I say that time works. Let me confirm your appointment. If unavailable, unfortunately that time is booked. The closest available time is alternative time. Would that work for you? So we're just booking. And then use current time converted to Australian Brisbane time zone when discussing availability. Now this is actually since the update. So I would update this right here and I would put it in. So it says use current time. What I would do is take this, and Retell has a better function, current time, dynamic variables. What you actually would, what's better to do is go like this. Let's see. Just make sure I'm doing it correctly. Current time, and then put in the time zone. So if you wanted to do Australia, it would look just like this. Delete this entire thing, and then put in use current time Australia Sydney. So that's the best way to do it. And then the last part for cal.com, you need to use either a phone number or an email. In this case, the email was what the client wanted to use, so we just put By the way, I've got email on file for you. Is that still the best email to send the appointment confirmation? The reason this is so important is because AI voice agents have a horrible time capturing email over the phone. It just adds so much friction, and when you're trying to close someone, there's no time for that. If it messes up once, the person might be like, never mind, I give up. So instead what we do is this is the client's database, sample of it. This went down like 300 rows, but it had the person's email. And so we read this out to them, go, hey, is info@johndoe still the best one to reach you at? Oh yeah, it is. Great. Perfect. I'll keep that on file. And then that's it. Confirm their full name. Sorry. And then just to confirm, I've booked you for a demo, day and time, and send the confirmation to updated email. Does that sound correct? So once that's all confirmed, we would now invoke the function book appointment. Thanks for your time. And then I also have just an alternative, so you always have to make sure you account for what happens if the person says no. So if they're not interested, have a script, totally get it. Most directors felt the same way, but once they did, so it tries to sell them one last time. Look, it's just 15 minutes, no commitment, no pressure. Worst case, you walk away knowing exactly what's out there. Best case, you get hours of your life back every week. Would you be open to just having a quick look? So if they still refuse, exit gracefully. Fair enough, mate. Appreciate your time. If things ever get too hectic and you want to revisit this, just give us a shout. Take care. And that's it. So it's pretty professional. I included some FAQs. Now, this is just some questions if they ask, it'll have. If you notice, I've kept this agent very lean. I didn't want to add in an extra knowledge base, which would add about 150 milliseconds of latency. And I wanted to just make sure everything was in the prompt here, and it was below the token limit, about 3,500 tokens there, where it starts to get a little bit clunky and bigger. So I kept it at this amount, and I think the agent performed a lot better as a consequence. Now, you can see you can look through my rules if you want. Obviously, this entire agent is in my community, but if you want to know a little bit more about the settings, I would say first, I use 4.1 mini over 4.1 or 4.0, obviously, because 4.1 mini seems to have the best balance between latency and intelligence. So you can see here 4.1, which is much smarter, has a higher latency. And when it comes to doing a sales call, a second extra of latency could mean the difference between literally closing the deal or not, especially since that's what leads to the realism and them believing that it is a human at the other end of the line and taking them seriously as a result. So 4.1 mini sits in that beautiful spot right there of intelligence and latency. You can see it's almost as intelligent as 4.0, but its latency is significantly reduced. So I'm willing to pay that price right there, that tiny amount for intelligence. I used Noah. I found that was the best Australian voice with the lowest latency I could find, about 870 to 1,000 milliseconds of latency. Just standard English, non-multilingual. Obviously no knowledge base, like I said. I have an end call function, the book appointment function, and the check counter. I'm not going to open these. They have my API keys there. I should probably move that. But then you have knowledge base. I'm sorry, the speech settings. I kept it as simple coffee shop background sound. So background volume 1, just default settings pretty much. Interruption sensitivity. I did play with this a little bit. It's very sensitive. So I find that when you're doing interruption sensitivity, don't change it too much because it can radically change the way your agent performs. If you know you're going to be calling a lot, maybe older people, then you want to have an interruption sensitivity that's a little bit lower. This just modulates how easy it is for the AI to be interrupted by humans on the other end. And so if it's an older person, it's better to make it less interruptible. If it's a younger person, it's better, what I find, make it a little bit quicker to be interrupted because a person might go, hey, wait, what about this? Whereas an older person will just sit back and listen. That's what we found. So responsiveness always at the highest for us. That's just what we kind of had a little bit higher latency because of Twilio. Twilio is the phone provider we're using to connect this all to a telephony system. So it actually has a number based in Australia. We're not calling this from the US. If you're wondering, we had to import a custom number from Twilio, which is pretty easy to do. But Twilio can add a little bit of latency. So if you are concerned about that, you want to make sure your responsiveness is set to the highest so the agent responds as quickly as possible. I added back channeling. So this is when the agent just goes, hey, or yeah, or okay, while the person is talking, just to add to the realism. Yeah. And this is something I didn't play with at all, but it might be good to. Reminder message frequency. It controls how often the AI will say like, hey, are you still there? Hey, what's going on? Are you there? So if there's 10 seconds of silence, it will say, hey, are you still there? Now, many times the AI would be put on hold for a minute or two. And so this would just kind of confuse it. And so it might be better to just have 0 altogether, because it will just be talking to the hold machine if that's not taken care of. Transcription settings, same thing. Optimize for speed. And then that's pretty much it on that front. End call on silence, max call duration. And in post-call analysis, I think this is the most important part here. We have the demo needed and call summary. So basically this would just say, does the person need a demo or not? Yes or no? Did they want to book the demo link? And then call summary at the end. So it would give like callback requested, the director, and then I gave some formatting examples here. Okay. So that was important. The other settings are really not that important. You can skip out of these. And then webhook. So this is where we're sending all of our information over to make.com. So that's an overview of everything we used. Obviously, the first line here is the funeral director. Is this the funeral director? Because if it is, sometimes we'd call them and it would actually be the funeral director picking up. Then we want to pitch them immediately. If it's not, we need to know. Now, in terms of the make scenario, I can close this. I had 2 scenarios that I was using. The outbound caller scenario, and then another scenario over here, which is just a logger, which would log all the calls and reset it. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's go over to caller. And basically the way this works is, first we have a simple Google Sheets. Here's the Google Sheets. And what it does is we have all these names. Imagine you have all these names. Last name, director, phone number, email, company. And then we have a status here, which I've added as a row. Now, for every single name that has status not called next to it, we want the AI to trigger a call. But we want it to do it one at a time. And then we have the post call, which after the call is done, it should fill in this information, populating it with, did they pick up? Did they want a demo? Was there a call summary, call recording, transcript, all of this, which is very important for our analysis after the fact. If I go back here, basically it goes in, checks the Google Sheets, and then for the statuses, and everything that says status not called, it returns. So you get status not called, and all the variables in those rows, okay, and the phone number. But then we want to separate all that information out. So I just have a search a rows function, which you should know how to do. Just go like this, add module, search rows, just like that. And then I have an array aggregator. What this does is it separates the information. So if it returns 150 not called people, I just want to go through them one at a time. And so it will run each one at a time based off this. So then I'll go over to Retell, and then I have my from number. So this is the Retell number. What you have to do is go to Retell AI, so add module, Retell AI, create a phone call, just like so. And then you want to go add, put in your API key. You'd go over here to Retell. And let's go funeral API key over here. Keys, make a new key, API key, create, and then you copy that key. Bring it over to Retell, paste it in, save, and then you have your Retell connection. From there, choose the number that is associated with this agent. So go here. You can see that this number is the one. If I hit publish, I have the same number here being used as the number over here. And so that way this number is mapped to this particular agent, and then it will always call from this number here with that agent. Now the to number, this comes from our array aggregator. The to number is simply the number that we have for the funeral director right here. So that gets mapped to this place. So that's all you really need to place a call. But obviously we're passing 3 dynamic variables, like I said earlier, which are just the company, the name of the funeral director, and then the funeral director's email. So we have to pass those in individually for every call so that the call is unique to that caller, right? So you can see I have first name and the email. And what happens here is I just go company, and I literally would create a dynamic variable, look something like this. I can show you just so if you want me to. I would literally go like this, company, and then I would paste in where that is mapped. So let's go here, company right there, and then I would add another variable, name, then put in first name, and then add another variable right here, which is going to be email. So, sorry, put that below. Okay, just like so. And so that's the first scenario. That's all there is to it. It's pretty simple. And then the last thing was they wanted it running every 5 minutes, so we set this to run every 5 minutes, and then save. And it would go through and call each one by one. He would start it every morning at 6 a.m. and then stop it at 6 p.m. And that was all there was to it. Now, after every single call, oh no, it's running now. After every single call, what would happen is it would go log all that information using this scenario right here. So we have a simple webhook. I'll hit delete old data. And all this does is we copy this address to clipboard, go over to Retell, paste it in right here, hit save. We filter only for the event call analyzed because there's lots of different webhooks being sent through, but you just want to make sure it's like this, equal to call analyzed. And then we do a search rows function. This search rows just makes sure we update the same row that we place the call from. So it will go through all the rows and map the to number that we're calling to with the right phone number in the row. So it'll find the row with the phone number that we're calling to, if that makes sense, at this particular call. So if we're calling to the funeral director here, what it will do is take that phone number that the call was placed and go through the Google Sheets, find only that one phone number. Now it knows the exact row in which that phone number is in, and then return all the information in that row. So that way we can manipulate it. So we get it, search rows function, and then we have an update a row function. And what that does is it just takes now that row number, right? So it would go, oh, let's see, which row here has phone number 757 da 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 da. Oh, this row number 2. Okay, row number 2 has this phone number. Well, that must be the row we're trying to update. So then we go from here. We take that row number 2, and then we update it with the information coming over from Retell, which is just 4 things here. We have a pickup status, demo needed, call summary, call recording, transcript. Now, the demo needed, all of this is mapped over from Retell. You can see we have just like this. Let's see, custom information sent over under call analysis, custom analysis data, and then you'd put in demo needed right there. Call summary, same thing. Put it in, call summary, recording, and transcript. Now, something that's important if you're ever doing outbound campaigns, you need to know if people actually pick up the phone or not. The way I did this is I just made a little simple logic that basically says, if this certain variable here, if call disconnect reason equals voicemail reached, then, so if the voicemail is reached, then put not answered. If voicemail is not reached, so they actually pick up the phone, then we just put answered, and that way it will always populate correctly. Hit save. And that's the only other scenario that we're using. So that's the 2 scenarios we're using for this. That's pretty much it. You can see how simple they really are in actuality, and then here's the full Retell system that we're using. Alright, now let me take you through how exactly I delivered this agent for the client. And if you're wondering why I'm in a different room, I always try and film these videos in one take, but today it was just impossible. Life happens. So I'll show you, this is really my entire flow. I'm going to try to not leave anything out from this entire project delivery. It's something a lot of people ask me about in general when it comes to my clients. We have the discovery call, the onboarding, everything, and then the last project delivery with the second call. So this is a quick client because I actually closed them within 24 hours of taking the discovery call. This client found me through YouTube, so they came in and they had seen lots of my videos before. This client had actually already built one of the outbound agents in my YouTube videos, and so they were like ready to go, but they couldn't figure out that last step with make.com, and they also were having trouble with the retail settings. And for that reason, they said, you know what? I'm just going to hire him to do it. It's too much work for me. I've got a business to run. And so he was a serious kind of austere man when I got on the phone, but the video call. But after a little bit of communicating with him, I built some rapport, kind of like how I always do in sales calls. I'll jump in and be like, hey, how's it going? And try to go back and forth a little bit. And he was from Australia. And so I said, oh, Australia, I love Outback. And he was laughing. So that went well, and then I said, okay, whenever you're ready, I'm happy to jump in. And he was like, okay, let's do it. And the first thing I asked him was, hey, what's your call volume? Whenever I hear about outbound sales calls, people typically have like tens of thousands of calls they want to do, and it can be crazy. Maybe they want to do 100 concurrent callers, and what they don't realize is when you're doing outbound with voice AI, you have to be really careful you don't get shut down or flagged by Twilio, especially if you're doing like 100 calls at the same time. There's like even concurrency limits you have to be aware of, and then that includes all of this extra stuff like buying rotating numbers so that you don't call every single one of your leads from the same number, which would then shut down your number. Anyway, so I explained that to him, and then I asked him, okay, let me ask you this. What kind of things does this agent need to do? So tell me, does it need to book appointments? And he said, yes, it does. Does it need to be able to be well versed on your website information? He's like, no, not really. It just needs to be able to answer basic questions. I'm like, okay, great. And what's your call volume? Oh, I want to do about 400 calls. Okay. What's and this is my favorite question to ask on a discovery call. I asked him, why now? What's pushing you to build and buy this right now? And he said, well, if I don't do this now, it's going to continue to cost my business money after investing all of our capital into this software. So we have to sell it. I'm like, okay, that's good enough. So I have extra leverage to use in my proposal. He also turned around and asked me, hey, I saw on your YouTube channel that you charged for a similar agent like $900. Is that what we could kind of do for this one? And I was like, whoa, hang on a second. You got to be careful as a content creator. I said, well, for an outbound system like yours, scheduling appointments, I would typically charge anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for something like this. I ended up putting it a little bit lower in the proposal, but anyway, I said to him, that's realistic for this price range. And he said, well, the thing is, I've already built part of this agent, so I'm expecting a little bit of discount. I said, I know, but I don't know your work. I don't know if you're a full-fledged developer. I don't know anything. So I'm going to have to still go through and do pretty much just as much amount of work going through and making sure what you've done is correct. And so I explained to him, I'll give you a price in the proposal, but that's typically what we'd operate within. And then I said, what is your budget for this project? I think that's a really important question to ask. Remember, what we're doing is a service for people. We're not selling a product. And so services vary in pricing depending on the client. And if you have a client who is really going to value your service a lot more than another client, and they're desperate for it right now in this moment, then you can charge them more. And so that's different from a product, and I can get into that a little bit more. But he said, for this project, I'm thinking around $1,000. So I said, okay, well, a little bit on the low end, but maybe I'll see if I can work with you. And we left it at that. Now, I went to the next step as soon as we hung up, and I want to emphasize, I cannot emphasize this point enough even, you always want to send your contract and proposal and invoice all in one and do it within the hour. I see so many people doing this wrong. I've done it wrong in the past, so don't feel bad. But the best way to do this is to go ahead, take the proposal that you have, and I actually will create the proposal going back to our call recording, pasting all of that entire transcript into ChatGPT and saying, okay, help me write a proposal for this according to the call recording. Make sure that everything is fact checked according to this transcript. And it just saves me lots of time. Then I take the contract and I bake it into the proposal. So here's the proposal I used. I'll just show it to you. And what I do is I put it all in one. And then the last step is I go ahead with an email, put in the invoice at the bottom, which is a Stripe payment link for the 50% up front. So most people, and I learned this from my friend Nick, what they do is they'll just, and this is what I used to do, I'd send the proposal, they say great, I send them the contract, they sign it, and then I send them the invoice, and they pay it, okay? That's 6 back and forths there, 6 opportunities for things to break. Instead, for a project like this, it's only $1,000 around or so dollars, send everything in one, and then they click and sign, and it's done. So much less friction. Anyway, that's the first thing, and I'm going to take you through this line by line. And so it was just a very simple, even Google Docs one, nothing beautiful. And then what I did is I gave the project scope. I explained this is what the agent's going to do. I went through, okay, our team will ensure prompt engineering excellence, backend development, time zone adaptation, and the project will be completed and delivered within 7 days from the start date. And then I put the second 50% of the payment is due upon client confirmation of a fully functional system. Ownership, and then I put in once delivered and fully paid, the AI voice agent belongs entirely to the client. I'm going to get into that as well later as to how this works when you're servicing clients, what to be aware of. Now, I'm going to say something else. In terms of contracts here, you can see that I have some general contract information that are typically included in any contract, but since this project is so low, the contract is really more of a formality, and the reason for that is because the legal cost to enforce this contract is more than the project is worth. That's crazy. So from that perspective, why am I going to obsess over a contract and get it just right when it's really not worth my time in the long run? Now, I'm not saying that you should forget about contracts and not put any effort into them, but at the same time, don't over obsess over them so much so that it may even cost you the deal and the time it takes you to deliver the contract and the proposal. So, especially when they're projects this small. So I put in some information. Similar projects, similar outbound appointment systems are typically priced between $1,800 and $3,000. And then I put total project fee. I also kind of adjusted the price to reflect the initial setup you've completed. So I gave him a little bit of a discount to make him happy. But as you notice here, $1,200 was more than what he said. So I knew that by saying $1,200 instead of $1,000, he might feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. But if I just said $1,000, I would most definitely be leaving money on the table. And I knew that because when I sent it to him, he was a little bit hesitant, but he did go ahead and buy. He's like, it was a little high, but it was worth it to me, which means it was a good deal. Some checklists. And then I list out the client requirements, the things that we'll need, and we'll go over this more in the onboarding part. And everything is so. Okay, so that's important to understand. What does the onboarding look like? Well, there's 2 main ways to service clients. So you can service them either with a dashboard, so they never see the back end. It can be Ultravox, Vappy, Retail, and underlying everything, you own the intellectual property of the voice agent. So you can charge them 50 cents a minute and only pay 5 cents a minute. And that's totally fine, because instead of charging a huge setup fee, that's how you make your money. And in this case, you really come along as the service provider. You are the service provider. Whereas the other option is you can go in and build in the client's retail account. This is the way I started out as a beginner. I would just go ask the person for their retail account, keep it simple, their Make.com account, and I essentially would build everything on their end and then turn the agent over to them. This I found was a way to make quick and easy money and then also gain some experience under my belt to make me more client ready in the future. I also didn't really have the infrastructure or time to do ongoing maintenance for these agents. And so I found it was just a quick way to make money, build experience without any of the future headache by continuing to service clients. So in this way, you're really just a freelancer. And I think for beginners who are just kind of dipping their toes in the water, what I did in this video is obviously this method. And it's by far the easiest way to get into this space. You build everything in their account, you turn it over when it's done, you do the best job you can. And if you want to keep servicing them with an ongoing monthly maintenance fee, you absolutely can. But again, you're not going to be owning the underlying the IP. So you're basically like building a car for someone and then handing them the keys, and they can run off with it and then stop paying you. So if you really want to make a long-term business building with MRR, the better way is to do it like this with a dashboard where you actually are the service provider. And if they stop paying, they lose access to the voice agent. So as soon as I sent him this information, here is the email, the exact email I sent him right here. I'm not going to show his name, but thank you for the email. Our team is eager to begin work with you. This is after he sent, after he said that my proposal looked amazing. I said your thoroughness is really appreciated. He had already sent me some information about Twilio and how he had already imported the number, which did save us some time. And then I just said, okay, here's what we're going to need from you. Now, onboarding is all about getting everything you need from the client to start the project. All right. So if you look at this, I said for Retell, this is what we're going to need from you. Please try inviting someone to the account using my email. And so if he already has a Retell account, I'm just asking him to take my email here and invite me over to his account. And the way that works is you'd literally go like this, go to workplace, and you have member, and then you'd invite a member to your workplace, just like that. And so he had to do that with me and put in my email. And you then from there, I asked him to do the same thing for make.com. So I said, for make, you can also do the same thing. That way we can edit his scenario. So for Twilio, he didn't want to give his login credentials, which was actually fine because he already imported the number. So most definitely we wouldn't need to use it. And then the last thing is, I need you, if you've done all these things, I need you to make a Google Sheet, and I want you to add these columns. Now, we can edit them ourselves, but it's just easier if the client goes ahead, and this is a type of client that's obviously very involved with the process. If he goes into the Google Sheets and makes the sheet itself and then shares it with us, it'll be easier if it's all complete. Now, what normally I do is the client will send me the Google Sheets shared from his email, and then I'll go in and edit it and make sure everything works. Now, why am I doing that? Well, when you're using make.com, you have to make sure that if you're in the client's make.com account, the Gmail that you're using that's hosting the Google Sheets or whatnot is actually in the client's account as well. Otherwise, it won't work. Like if the Google Sheets is under my account and I'm trying to access it from my client's make, then they won't be able to communicate. So that's really important to understand. And that way, that's why I have the client create the entire Google Sheets. They share it to me. I edit it, but it's all under their account. And that way, when I'm editing it in make.com, it's super easy. I even had the client go ahead and set up the make.com scenario, just connecting the Google Sheets, because that was a lot easier than me trying to do it with him over a call. And so it was nice working with someone who's tech savvy. And that brings me to another point about services. When it comes to a service, services are what you call inseparable. So there's this concept of inseparability in services. And what that means is when I'm working with someone as a service provider, the quality of the outcome for my client is in part dependent on the way in which my client conducts themselves during our interaction. So if my client's super responsive, answers all the emails, gives everything we need, knows how to work his way around make and Retell, guess what? The project's gonna be a lot smoother and easier to deliver. But if my client's a nightmare to deal with and doesn't answer any of my messages, that concept of inseparability really starts to sting a little bit. And that's why I always interview my clients before I decide to work with them. Even if they're paying me all this money, I may turn them down because they might be difficult more than it's worth. So that's something to think about as well. Hopefully that helps you. So just like that, you can see I've attached a Stripe link for the upfront payment. And as soon as he paid that, then I would tell him the next step. So this entire time I'm leading the conversation and the interaction. As soon as it happens, I'll add you to a private WhatsApp group with me and the assigned developer for streamlined communication, and it's taken care of. And if you know me, I'm very intense about this. Literally, as soon as the client pays, I'll go straight over and I'll do something like this. I'll get their phone number and put them in a WhatsApp and be like, hey, just kicking off the project. I'll be overseeing everything, and blank, our lead dev, will be running point on the build. We'll keep you updated here with progress and any roadblocks. And now this is already starting the entire interaction out on a good note. So that's something important to keep in mind. I try always to make sure that interaction is going to be really pleasant from the get-go. And that's also kind of starting the cadence I like to keep up with, which is one of every day or 2 days, I'm going to be sending you an update on how the project is going. So we're just keeping those communication lines open. And I have a very important reason for that, which I'll get to in a second. Okay, so that's really the main onboarding process. When it comes to Retell and Make, it's pretty simple. Now, project management is probably the most important thing that I cover. And I talk about this a lot more in my community, because if you don't have good project management skills, everything else breaks down. I would even venture to say that the majority of voice AI projects I've seen fail have not been a dearth of development knowledge, but to the contrary, have been a lack of communication client skills or project management skills. And so if you master project management from the get-go, you're to do a lot better. What I did was first, like I showed you, established client communication. The second thing I did was I set deadlines. So as soon as I found out, hey, this is the project that I'm going to be building, I said, okay, we have 1 week to do this, which means we need to have everything done for us a little bit earlier. Let's say we need to have this done by Friday if it's due Sunday. And so I will say to my developer that I'm working with, look, man, I'm going to take on all the prompting because I love that stuff. I'll do all the settings and Retell. And then if you want to go ahead and hook up all the make.com scenarios and make sure the scenario is working, both of those, then I'll be Gucci. So I'm divvying up now, assigning roles here. And that is kind of a point I can't emphasize enough. You need to clearly assign roles. So if you're working with someone, this is really important. If you're not, then that's okay. Setting deadlines, I always plan in reverse. So if I want to have everything done by Friday, like the agent is ready to go, then on Thursday, I need to have a full testing day. And on Wednesday, I need to have all my integrations connected to the agent. And on Tuesday, that means I need to have before I even do the integrations, I want to make sure my agent is completely working, building it on the Retell side. Some people might be watching this video thinking, well, it looked pretty easy, Mark, building this Retell agent. You made it look like it's a piece of cake. Why are you going through this like it's a big deal? And the reality is, if this is your first time ever building a voice AI agent, it's a lot harder than you think. It takes a lot more time than you think. If this was my first project, it probably would have taken me like 20 hours because the testing is what takes so much time. People don't realize that. So if this is your first time, don't underestimate it. This is not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of trial and error, banging your head against the desk sometimes, even to do a simple agent like this. So keep that in mind whenever I'm teaching you things. I'm not going to make it seem like other gurus in this space might paint it to be some easy money. It's very difficult, especially when you're just starting out, but it's so worth it, and I absolutely love it. So that's the last thing I do is when you're doing project management, you need to budget out a lot of time to test the agent, sometimes 2 full days of testing. That's probably going to be the majority of what takes up your time, especially when you're starting out. The way I actually decided to go about building this is I said, first, we need to set up a plan for success. And I recommend you do the same. So for me, it was, well, we can't test this agent's booking process in his work calendar, the one that it's currently connected to. So I need to go ahead and clone this entire agent, build it on my own in my backend with an American number, using all of my American phone numbers to test this. Also because I can't test the outbound functionality on Australian numbers from a Retell American number. And so that was another thing I decided to do from the get-go. First, build everything on my account and then perfect it. So once I built the entire system, test it on my account. There's also kind of a tangential reason for this. If I'm testing the agent and paying money to test it, maybe it's $5, $6, $7, whatever it, maybe it's more. at least I'm not doing it on his account out of courtesy almost. You can always ask the client, hey, is it fine if I do the testing fees? And most of the time they're fine with it, but I'm not going to just go do that without asking him. Because, I mean, doing to others as you'd have them do it to you. And I think it's a little rude. So I test everything on my account at my expense, on my penny, and just the way I do it, so that by the time everything is working, you know, I put it on his, and then then he can run with it. But when I test it on my account, I'm also looking for things that I can't do with the other one. So if I go to like, oh, it's not here, but that's fine. If I go to his Australian Google Sheets with all of his leads list, I'm not going to build the full ready agent, or I'm not going to build the test agent using that Google Sheets. Obviously, because that's the live Google Sheets that if we test it with, it's going to call. So I created a separate Google Sheets to go and test the agent. I loaded it with some American numbers, some of my friends' numbers, and I went through it and made sure that it was actually working throughout the day. And that way, by the time we put it into his account, it was already, and all we had to do was copy the entire prompt, transfer it, and then edit our make.com scenarios so that they were working. I think in this case, I actually put the make.com scenarios also on my account, and then I transferred them over to his account after they were perfected. I just like doing everything on my account. Maybe it's because I'm also afraid that the client will be watching my build process. Sometimes clients have actually tried to edit the prompt, or maybe tried to edit the make scenario. And so since then, I've always said, hey, we build everything ourselves. Please don't touch anything. No disrespect to you guys, but only because we have a very systematic approach to how we build your agents, and we just want to be 100% responsible for anything that breaks. That way, there's no ambiguity about whose fault it is when something goes wrong. Once we had everything going, by I think it was Friday, I then went and scheduled a call for project delivery, and I said, okay, the agent is working great. Remember, the entire time over WhatsApp, I've been saying, hey, this project is going really well. We encountered this issue, and then this is how we fixed it. Just short and sweet. By Wednesday, I had sent a little demo to include him in the development process. I said, hey, this is how the agent sounds. What do you think of this intro, and what do you think of the voice? So I played the icebreaker in a little voice note, and then I also played the voice and then got his feedback, so he's part of the development process. That's just a more efficient way, I think, of doing project management. Otherwise, you wait until the end when you're unveiling the grand thing, and then you find out he actually doesn't like the voice, and he doesn't like the way the agent's speaking or the icebreaker. It's a lot more underwhelming. So I find if you include them in the development process, it'll be a lot cheaper, faster, and more impressive for them once you take project delivery. What did this look like? Well, this is the last call, and with the client, I just got on the call with them. I've showed them the agent built in their account. I demoed it for them, and then with this particular agent, he was like, he's like, I want to call it right now. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I never tested it on the Australian side because I couldn't. I don't have an Australian number, so I was a little bit nervous. But he called it, worked flawlessly. And I said to him, okay, you have now about 3 days, according to the contract, to tell us if there's anything you'd like to change. And if there's not, then the agent's yours. And that's it. And we're not responsible if anything breaks. Now, some of you might go, Mark, why are you doing it that way? That sounds like you're just trying to get rid of the agent as quick as possible. Well, it depends. I do a lot of ongoing support for some clients. So if the agent is going to need lots of ongoing support, if say he had 10,000 leads and this entire campaign was going to last 3 months, well, then I would sit there and go, okay, let's do an ongoing support plan, maybe $400 a month, and we'll do 24/7 monitoring. We'll go through the call logs, basically your insurance policy to ensure that this agent doesn't break, because the agents break a lot more often than you think, and they're not always our fault. They're just the providers we're reliant upon, right? But for him, he's like, well, I only have 400 calls, so I'd just rather be my own tech support. I don't need to pay any ongoing maintenance. I'll run through these in about a week or so. I said, okay, that's fine. And so there was no opportunity for ongoing support in this case. And in that case, you need to say very clearly, Okay, if you're not paying for ongoing support, you are your own tech support. Sounds harsh, but it's just the case. So if something breaks, you can't come back to me 2 weeks later and go, you need to fix this. And it's like, hey, I told you, this is what you agreed with. So that's something you want to keep in mind when you're delivering these agents. But it ended up working really well. You're probably wondering, what are the results of this campaign? And I'll show you right here. So let's go through it. We called 392 people, reached funeral directors. Only 10% actually reached the funeral director. And this was not due to the AI. It was just 90% of the time the AI would call and the receptionist would be like, oh, he's busy. Oh, he's not in right now. Oh, he's with someone. And so only 10% of the time, oh yeah, John's actually here. And when it did show up that the person was there, the agent would immediately get transferred over, and it worked and nothing went wrong. So that was impressive. But it also goes to show how much cold calling time is kind of wasted. You're calling all these businesses, and most of the time you can't even get past the gatekeeper. So it was a little eye-opening for me to see that. There were some errors. So we had about 9 errors where it hung up early. One time a person was talking to the agent, and the agent said, hey, can I talk to the funeral director? And the person's like, who are you? What? You want to talk to who? And the agent's like, oh, you don't want to talk anymore? Okay, goodbye. And hung up. I'm like, what? So the agent completely misheard the person. I think it was a bad line in part, but still, a normal human wouldn't do that. So it was an AI error. We had 3 people notice it was an AI. Like, you had a few receptionists who, they talk to people all the time, right? So they said, wait, are you a computer? And then there was about 30% of this. This was so common. Call me back later. Hey, he'll be in. The funeral director's not here right now, but he'll be in here tomorrow at noon. Or call me back in 20 minutes. That's something that if you don't know how to handle, you're really missing out on incredible opportunity for outbound. I actually teach this in my course. You can become a competent voice AI developer in only 30 days if you go through this week by week. I'm going to give it a plug. I have to, because it addresses this primary issue for people who have no idea how to set up your agent to automatically call people back. And so I included that here. Where is it? Where if you're, here it is, add callback functionality. And basically I take you through 4 different agents, production assistants that I've actually built for real businesses, and you recreate them yourselves, become a competent voice AI developer in the process. And then as a result, you even get to be kind of start as a developer in my community. And when projects come along, you can build for other people and make some money that way. So now you might be looking at this last one, like only 2 bookings. Well, I know that's a little bit lower than your rate for standard cold calling. It should be about 1 to 4% is a sweet spot. So for 392, you should get about 5 or 4 demos booked. In this case, it's only 2, which is about 0.5%. So it could have done better for sure. I don't know if that had to do anything with the software or maybe the particular market this guy was selling to, but let's just pretend it was the AI's fault. He still overall was happy with the assistant. This is such a high ticket that he's selling that 2 demos booked for not having to lift a finger was a huge win for him, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. But I think it does overall serve to represent the fact I said at the beginning, which is AI does not perform as well as a human over the phone, but it's getting better and quickly. And that will be interesting to see in the coming months. Wow, we covered a lot in today's video, and honestly, I don't want to overwhelm you with all this information, but the main takeaways from today are you learned how to build an outbound sales AI voice agent that can be sold for real money and applied to any industry. More than that, you learned my exact project delivery process, how I built and structure proposals, contracts, onboarding processes, my entire thinking behind it all, and hopefully that gives you a greater understanding on how you could do something like this for yourself. And if you really are serious about making money like this in the voice AI space, I highly recommend you join my community below. I've mentioned it before, but honestly, it could change your life, and it's changed mine being able to sell and build voice agents for people around the world. So thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel if you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Tectonic, where AI finds its voice. Come for the tech, stay for the transformation.